In this video, I will be surviving 100 days as Naruto in the hardcore Minecraft Naruto mod. For these 100 days, I have 3 goals. My first goal is to learn the Rasengan and Shadow Clone Jutsu. My second goal is to learn Perfect Sage Mode, which will help with my third goal. Finally, I want to defeat all the AKATSUKI that are trying to take down the Hidden Leaf Village, like ITACHI. Can I achieve all of these goals in just 100 days? Watch until the end to find out. Day 1, I spawned in as Naruto and I looked around noticing I had a bunch of things in my inventory. I had things like ramen, kunai, shurikens, money, and my jutsu skill learners, which I'll use to learn more jutsus later in this video. So after checking out my inventory, I realized that there's a skill page. On the skill page, there's a bunch of different stats that I'll have to upgrade throughout these 100 days. So after looking at that, I decided to grab some wood, and then after chopping down the tree, make myself some wooden tools. I made the basic things like a pickaxe and an axe. After I made the pickaxe, I noticed that there's some stone over here, so I can make myself some stone tools pretty quickly. So after mining all of it, I climbed out of the cave to go craft the stone tools. It was getting pretty late, so I had to be quick, so I made myself a pickaxe and an axe before blocking up and waiting out the night. And on day 2 while out exploring, I noticed this giant wall, so I knew it had to be the Hidden Leaf Village. After finding the entrance, I walked in and I met Shikamaru. Shikamaru drops these things called shogi pieces, and these would be used to craft shogi boards which I could trade in for money. This money would be used to buy a better weapon so I could begin my training and train a lot quicker. But in order to do this, I would need a lot more wood. So after grabbing some more shogi pieces from Shikamaru, I decided to go out and start mining some wood. And while out exploring, I clicked on one of the fire learners and I learned the fire release. But it needed 5 ninjutsu to use it. So after upgrading my ninjutsu stat, I was able to right click on it and it put a whole fire ring around me and gave me fire resistance. And this is an awesome first jutsu to learn. The way to upgrade your jutsus and your stats in general is by killing mobs. They drop these things called levels, and with each level, you get to upgrade your stats. Later in the night, it was getting super late, so I found some sheep, and I was able to use one of my jutsus against them. Since it was a fire circle, it actually cooked the meat for me, so I had some better food. And after killing all the sheep, and getting a couple levels, I was able to craft myself a bed and go to sleep. The next day, I came back with a bunch of wood and crafted a bunch of shogi boards to trade for money. I knew this process would take a long time, so by the time day 5 rolled around, I developed a strategy where I'd put a bunch of shogi boards in a chest and then trade them all in at once. After I finished trading with Shikamaru, I took all the silver Rio I got and crafted them into gold Rio before going out on an adventure, and that's when I saw an enemy. This was White Zetsu. I didn't know if I'd be able to take it on, but I had to. And this thing was super powerful. After I got the hidden, I ran away when I found this weird area. I used my fire jutsu and it seemed to be mainly unaffected, and at this point I was losing a lot of hearts and quick. I ran back to heal up, and when I turned around, Zetsu had died to the fire. But there were some zombies coming after me, so I used the same jutsu to take them down as well. And I killed them like the segue to this video's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Honkai Impact 3rd. Honkai Impact 3rd is a free-to-play game made by the creators of Genshin Impact that I personally play and really enjoy because of the thrilling battles and the incredible storyline within the game. Like seriously, it's really fun. And it has gotten even better because they just released version 6.3 on January 12th, which brings some awesome things to the game. The main story of Honkai Impact 3rd focuses on 3 heroines fighting against the mysterious energy of Honkai, protecting the world and growing up along the way. So it's pretty similar to Naruto. And in the latest chapter of the story, one of the protagonists, Bronya, will transform into an even more powerful form, the Hersetcher of Truth. The Hersetcher of Truth is Bronya's newest S-rank battlesuit, and it's super powerful. When you use her ultimate, she constructs a futuristic exoskeleton and uses some powerful ranged attacks. And there will be 2 new weapons released alongside it, the Key of Ascension and its PRI form, Domain of Ascension Truth Continuity. Both weapons are super cool and really fit her aesthetic, so you don't want to miss them. Honkai version 6.3 also features the Bustling Holiday Symphony, which is a faction exploration contest. Not to mention, during the event, you can exchange shop tokens for the sweet and spicy new outfit and more. And the character Gricio will get a new look, which is a maroon riding hood that you can get as well. To go with the Riding Hood theme, Mr. Knight would be the big bad wolf, with new effects and an awesome story between the 2 characters. Apart from the game news, I'm excited to announce Honkai is releasing an anime special which will premiere on January 20th of this year with 2 episodes. This is the poster, so you can look forward to that and playing Honkai Impact 3rd. Now if you download the game using the gift code TRUTH63, you will get 30 crystals, 2,888 asterite, and the Herchester trial card for free. Now, back to the video. Realizing that I was super weak, I knew I would need to train and first and foremost get a better weapon. So I headed back into the Hidden Leaf Village city and talked to Tenten to get my new weapon. So after giving her all of my golden Rio, I got myself Sasuke's blade. And this thing was super nice and did a lot of damage, so now I'd be able to train a lot better. And of course, I started off by training against Tenten and getting myself a level. While going out to train, I found another White Zetsu, So after using my fire jutsu, I went in with Sasuke's sword, and it did a lot of damage, so I was able to finish him off quickly. I was nowhere near the strength I needed to be to fight the AKATSUKI, so I needed to get stronger. So I spent the next couple days training my taijutsu and my ninjutsu. And I had a lot of close calls, like this one getting me down to 2 hearts. But after I'd done a lot of training, it was finally time for me to go to bed. Day 9, I needed some things like some food. So I went and found a good area to mine some cobblestone and craft myself a couple furnaces so that I could smelt all the beef that I had gotten. I then enjoyed some ramen while I waited for it to cook. I was also able to upgrade a couple of my stats. So I decided to upgrade my shuriken jutsu, and I just needed one more level before I could start using shurikens. To prepare for more battles that were gonna come, I would need some basic armor. So I went down into the mines and mined a bunch of iron. I mean a lot of it. I took that iron, and after smelting it, I made myself a full set of iron armor and some iron tools. Soon after that, I was able to upgrade my shuriken jutsu to level 5. Now I could use shurikens. And something I found out about these was when you threw one and it didn't hit a target, it divided into 2. So I basically had a duplication glitch. So I used these new shurikens to train for the next couple days, and I was able to get 15 more SP, which allowed me to upgrade 15 different things. So I upgraded my speed and taijutsu, so I was stronger and faster. And after going back into the Hidden Leaf Village, I noticed that I had something in my inventory for a while and I didn't click on it. It was the Uzumaki release, and when I clicked on it, I got some of Naruto's armor. Now this actually fit me. So I took off all my iron stuff and put on Naruto's armor, and I was really looking the part. Due to all the training that I did, I was also able to learn the fireball jutsu technique. So after upgrading my ninjutsu to level 10, I tested it out and it was super cool and a powerful attack. I explored around the city some more when I came across the Hokage mansion. So I decided to go in and see who was in there. And that's when I found Tsunade. I clicked on her and she gave me a mission. She told me to come back when I'm at least a genin and come back with a sage roll. So I knew I had to train to become a genin. I found this guy and he was hostile. So after shooting a fireball jutsu at him, he started shooting some at me and I was able to finish him off. That's when zombies came up behind me and I had an all-out brawl. Not to mention there were multiple white Zetsus, so I had to fight him off at the same time. Luckily, I had some good chakra reserve, so I was able to shoot another fireball jutsu, and soon after finish off the other white Zetsu. I was tired of training, so I placed my bed down and went to sleep. And my training had paid off. I had a bunch of all the things I needed to upgrade my stats and learn new jutsus. I wanted to learn a new wind jutsu, so I decided to click on it, and after I got it, I learned Boruto's Stream. This would allow me to travel much quicker than I normally could. I also had some stat points and I wanted some more chakra reserve, so I upgraded my ninjutsu before going out and using my Boruto Stream to travel super quick. I had some extra stat points, so I upgraded my medicine and it gave me a whole other row of hearts. Because I unlocked some new jutsus and some other things, I knew I would have to train, so I came back to the training grounds when I saw someone new, and this was Kakashi. Kakashi was going to be my training sensei, so I did what he told me. My first lesson was to learn the Shadow Clone Jutsu. So after he showed me, I looked at my inventory and I had the Shadow Clone Jutsu technique. And after doing what I remember, I summoned my first couple Shadow Clones. And I was able to get 2 my first try. I wanted to test the durability of them, so I used some other techniques and my sword, and they are pretty weak right now, so I knew I would need to train them to make them stronger. I wanted to see what I could do with these Shadow Clone Jutsus, so I found a skeleton, and they both attacked it and defeated it pretty quickly. By that time, I wanted to restore some chakra, and it was getting super late, so I went to bed. Day 16 through 19, I spent the rest of the days training my jutsus, using different combinations, and seeing how many jutsus I could summon at once, like my fireball jutsus. Kakashi then gave me a task to bring a bunch of things to him, and once I do this, I would be officially a genin. So I did all those things. I used my Shadow Clones to get some gunpowder, and after some looking, I found myself an Enderman, and I was able to get myself the Ender Pearl. And that was the last thing I needed. So I decided to go back to Kakashi and see what he had in store for me. So after using my Boruto Stream to get back, and defeating a couple zombies with my shurikens, I was now officially a real shinobi, and I got the Hidden Leaf headband. This was a lot better than my normal helmet, and it looked a lot cooler. By the time day 20 rolled around, I was a genin now, and I'd upgraded a bunch of my stats like ninjutsu and given myself at least 1 on every stat. I was also a lot better with my Shadow Clone Jutsus because I had trained them quite a bit. And because I leveled up my Shuriken Jutsu, I was now able to use kunais, and I was getting super accurate with them. Not to mention, I learned a projectile wind jutsu, so now I had a much larger range of attacks. I went out exploring for the next couple of days looking for any AKATSUKI members that I can maybe fight. I eventually found myself in the Hidden Mist Village, and there were a ton of mobs in here. So after fighting off all the mobs, I was finally able to escape, and when I ran up this hill, there was a boss bar, and it was an AKATSUKI member, Hidan. And this guy was super powerful, so I had to play this smart. I got ready with all my attacks that I'd be using for the battle, all before he could see me. And it was getting super late, so I went to bed, and then the next morning, it was time to attack. I used my Shadow Clone Jutsu and charged in, but it seemed like Hidan didn't even care, and he ran right past the clone. He was super fast, so I tried hitting him back, but he dealt a lot of damage. So I had to retreat. I used my fireball technique to keep him back, and it was working for now. Then I used another multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu to hold him off and start doing a little bit of damage. He was getting too close, and I had to get back to think of a new strategy. So I used my Boruto technique to get back. Wanted to try out my new wind projectile on him, and it was a success, but it did like no damage. So I decided to go in with my kunais because they were pretty effective, and he wasn't able to hit me when I was throwing them. So I kept using my kunais, and I knew this would be the strategy that I would use to defeat him. I was running low on kunai, so I went in with my fire jutsu techniques, but the fire did no damage to him, and he retaliated back using his scythe to do a ton of damage to me. So I got out of there with my Boruto stream. I healed up and then came back in to do a bit more damage, but he was relentless and his scythe just did too much damage back to me. Luckily, I was able to hit a fireball jutsu while running away. Then my Shadow Clones lured him into a trap, so I was able to get a lot of damage on him and he wasn't really able to do much to me. So I just kept using more Shadow Clone jutsus to do more and more damage, getting him super low. Eventually, he was able to hit me back and did over half of my hearts, so I knew it wouldn't be easy finishing him off. He got his way out of the cave and I had to keep a good distance so he wouldn't one-tap me. I kept using my kunais and I was getting him lower and lower, but eventually he started to close the gap, but I was able to finish him off with the kunais. As a reward, I got a bunch of levels, and I got his extremely overpowered scythe. And this scythe is super cool. So after killing Shikamaru with it, I decided to go to bed in one of the houses in the village. I then journeyed back to the Hidden Leaf Village, and I went back to the Hokage Mansion. I then met up with Tsunade, and I had a new quest. So I accepted the quest, and I clicked on it, and it was to catch a cat. And after chasing it around for a long time, I finally caught it. After going back to Tsunade, she gave me a reward, which was pretty nice, some extra levels and some more money. Before I left, she told me that I had to go see Jiraiya to learn the substitution jutsu, so I had to train before I went. And the training was pretty annoying. I had to fight a bunch of shinobi and things like skeletons. So by the time day 33 rolled around, I was running pretty low on food, so after I murdered a bunch of cows and then cooked them in a furnace, I waited for that to finish before finally making it to the school. So I went inside to see where Jiraiya was, and after looking around, I saw a sign that had his name on it, and he was inside. So after talking with him and getting a new item, I right-clicked on it and I had the substitution jutsu. Now that I had this, I just had to train with it and get better. This jutsu is super cool. It put a log out and it teleported you away. I knew this jutsu would be super useful for the next AKATSUKI member that I fought. So I said goodbye to Jiraiya and then went right outside the school and found a bunch of pigs that I was able to train with. I used my Shadow Clone Jutsu techniques and murdered a bunch of them, getting myself a lot of food and levels in the process. So after doing that, I found what looked like an okay place to stay for the night. I made it up to an empty room, knowing that someday I would become the Hokage. But to do that, I would have to defeat all the AKATSUKI members. So I had a lot of training to do. I found myself a nice bed and went to sleep. With all the training that I did, I had a lot of points to use to get new jutsus and upgrade all of my jutsus. So I decided to learn a new wind jutsu, and this was the Rasengan. To use it, I needed to get level 40 ninjutsu, so after upgrading that, I tested it out on a white Zetsu, and it was super powerful and looked crazy. This would be one of the best jutsus that I could use against the AKATSUKI. Later that day, I went back to meet with Tsunade to get the new mission, and that's when I noticed all the heads on the Hokage mountain, and I wanted to be up there one day. But for now, I had to get the next mission, and after talking with Tsunade and accidentally hitting her, she told me that the newest AKATSUKI member was in the Sand Village, so I had to make my way over there and fast. After 4 days of running and using my Boruto stream to get there, I finally saw some signs that might look like the village would be over here. As I continued exploring through the desert, after a while, I found something floating in the sky, and then I looked down and found the AKATSUKI member. This was Sasori, so I immediately threw a Rasengan to do some damage. I then kept the pressure on him and tried to do a lot more damage with my kunais as well. And that's when he locked onto me and we both started to go blow for blow. But his attacks were doing a lot more damage than mine were. And I was super low at this point. So I activated the substitution jutsu to get away. And the Boruto stream to get even farther away after that. So I healed up before going back in using a Shadow Clone, which he immediately decimated. I still had a good amount of chakra, so I used a fireball jutsu to keep him back and let him on fire, and then used another fire jutsu to get him away before I Boruto streamed away. Now he was on fire and actively taking damage while I could heal up. All my new jutsus were working, and my kunai attacks were still just as effective as they were before. So I activated a multi-shadow clone jutsu so we could all start doing damage to him, and at this point he was less than half health, and I was still staying strong. I kept hitting him with kunais and luring him in before going in for some physical attacks. At this point he was super low and close to dying. Now I just had to finish him off without taking too much damage. I was out of kunais, so I used some shurikens to get him back before launching a Rasen shuriken to finish him off. Now I defeated 2 of the AKATSUKI members, and I was one step closer to becoming a Hokage. And I got a lot of levels from defeating this guy. It was basically nighttime by the time I had stayed in the desert, and a bunch of mobs were spawning. So this was a perfect opportunity for me to get a bunch of levels super quick and really increase my jutsus. That's when I came across the Sand Shinobi, and I thought they'd be more of a challenge, but I guess I'd gotten so much stronger from my training. I did spot another one in the distance, so I went up to challenge him. This guy was a little bit stronger, but he was still no match for me. And while training, I learned the mystical palm technique, which allowed me to have regeneration and train for an even longer period of time. And because my training had been successful, I decided to upgrade my medicine, which gave me another row of hearts. So now I had a lot more health, and I had the mystical palm, so it'd be super hard to die. By the time day 42 rolled around, I had a lot more training done, and I'd found the entrance to the Sand Village. This village was super cool, and the buildings were incredible. I made my way to the Kage building and just started looking all the way around the village. It was super crazy to see, and it was just completely different from the Hidden Leaf village. After I made my way up to the top hoping to see the Kage of the village, I couldn't see him anywhere, and all I could see were some skeletons shooting arrows at me. So after I took those guys out, I decided to sit in the chair before looking back and then leaving. It took me 5 days to get home, and my chakra control was really weird. I'd started floating, and I think it was because of my wind chakra getting stronger. But since it was stronger, I was able to get some new upgrades. Like, I learned the final move for the wind techniques, which was wind mode. And this allowed me to run faster, jump higher, and have more power in my wind moves. And not to mention, I had gotten another fire jutsu, but I had to upgrade a bunch of stats just to even it out. So after upgrading a bunch of stats, I was getting super powerful, and looking more and more ready to fight the rest of the AKATSUKI, so I went up and met with Tsunade. She told me to come back with the Sage Scroll, which lied with the AKATSUKI member Deidara. So I knew what I had to do. I had to go train with Kakashi to learn some new moves, like the Rasengan, to beat him. I finally met up with Kakashi, and he told me that I needed to train for a couple days before I could even think about learning the Rasengan. So I used my kunais to practice my aim, and practice controlling my chakra. I wondered why he was making me train with my chakra, even though I had already learned a form of the Rasengan, but I still trained anyways, and eventually I was able to get the Rasengan. It was on the ground, so I picked it up, and this thing was a melee attack, so I could use it even without chakra. It did 22 hearts, so I wanted to go test it out on something. And luckily Shikamaru was here, so I decided to use it, and that's when a creeper came up. So I decided to use it on that, and it did an insane amount of damage and launched back all the enemies like White Zetsu, killing him in 2 hits. With the Rasengan, I knew I'd be ready to take on Deidara. So I went back to Tsunade to get the location. She told me he was somewhere on the mountains. So after a couple days of looking, I finally found him. Now I just had to plot to see what attacks I could use to defeat him. So I decided to start with my most powerful attack, the Wind Rasen Shuriken. And after I did that, it did a good amount of damage, but I still had to keep doing more and keeping the pressure on him. So I used a bunch of kunais, and I was landing basically every hit. The training had really paid off. That's when he started launching his own attacks. And they were super powerful, not to mention they were ranged. I never fought against something like this. So I had to think of a new strategy to defeat him. One of which was using my Rasen Shuriken to do a bunch of damage, which had always worked, but it seemed like he was regenerating health. So I went in with my shadow clones and tried to do damage, but he took him out really easily. And his bombs started to do a lot of hearts, and I was less than half health, even with my health upgrade. I kept using kunais because they worked, but I realized I ran out of them. So I had to resort to using my jutsus, and then charging in and trying to use my Rasengan. And my shadow clones weren't effective against him, so I had to think of another way to get close. I waited behind a tree waiting for him to come closer, and that's when I hit him with my Rasengan, and knocked him back doing some damage. So I kept up this tactic, using a mixture of my shurikens and my Rasengan to get a lot of damage on him. But this didn't come without taking damage myself in the process. It was getting super late, and I wanted to sleep. Not to mention, I was already pretty low on health, so after Boruto streaming away, I decided to place down my bed and go to sleep. The fight continued the next day, and I decided to use some fire jutsu techniques to get some more damage in on him. I got in close and then hit him with my Rasengan, and it did a lot of damage. Now he was pretty close to being finished off, but I had to keep at it because there was still a chance that he could defeat me, and it was looking like it was a good one. I retreated back behind these trees to get some cover, and then launched another good attack at him. It didn't do as much damage as I thought, but when I hit him with my Rasengan, that did even more damage and launched him back. So I moved around, getting a good vantage point, looking for a good place to strike. That's when I decided to charge him. I had to keep dodging his attacks, and running in a circle, moving closer and closer towards him to get an attack off. The plan didn't work, and I had enough chakra to launch another attack, so I hit him with a Rasen Shuriken to finish him off. I then went over to collect my loot, and I'd gotten a couple things like a bunch of levels, Dieterga Scope Eye, and the Sage Scroll. That fight used up all of my food, so using all the weapons that I had, I murdered a lot of cows before putting them into the furnace and getting a bunch of cooked beef. This did take a while to smelt, and it was already nighttime by that point, so I placed down my bed and went to sleep. So the next morning I collected my things, ready to go see what Tsunade had to offer. I got close to the Hidden Leaf Village, and I was right on the top of it, right next to the Hokage statues. I wondered if I was ever going to get my head on this mountain. But for right now, I still needed to take down the Akatsuki, so I met with Tsunade to get the next mission. So I gave her my Sage Roll that I had collected with Dieterga, and she told me I need to learn Sage Mode. So I clicked on her and I was teleported into a forest. I didn't know where I was, nor where this forest was. So I decided to explore and see if I could find anything interesting. I found this bone structure before walking around and finding a toad in a jar. He looked pretty interesting, so I decided to talk to him. And he told me that he would teach me Sage Mode. All I would have to do is follow all of his instructions, and by the end of it, I should have the full perfect Sage Mode. So I threw in my scroll and I began training. And by the end of training, it was day 68, and I had my Sage Mode unlocked. It gave me Strength 3 and Resistance. I also unlocked a summoning scroll that I'm gonna have to level up my summoning to use. But my Sage Chakra increased heavily, and I had Sage Mode to battle my new enemies. I used my new speed and Sage Mode to go back home and go to sleep. Day 70 rolled around, and I just realized that I had my Sage Mode cloak on. So I was looking the part. I went back to see Tsunade, and she was gone. I checked everywhere, and I eventually got to the bottom of the heads of the Hokage mountain to look for her. And after mining into a couple walls, I dug myself into this passageway, which I didn't know existed. I went down this ladder, and I noticed a bunch of people there, including an Uchiha. Tsunade was there, and a bunch of the Kages, except for one of them. Apparently a Kage was killed, and Sasuke was here to help. He gave me a lightning DNA, and I gladly received the gift. When I clicked on it, I got a lightning skill learn, so now I could learn the lightning nature chakras. I would need this to defeat the next Akatsuki member who took out one of the Kage. I decided to immediately learn a new skill, and it shot lightning, so I knew this would be super powerful. Tsunade told me I needed to train before I could even think about fighting this new Akatsuki member. So I left the Hokage area, and then with the time I had, I realized that I didn't have a house. So after going to bed, I got straight to work on building myself a house. Getting wood, coal, mining for a bunch of resources, even diamonds. After spending a couple days mining, getting more and more diamonds so I can make some better tools, I crafted myself an axe and a pickaxe. And now with all the tools that I needed, I could now make myself a new house. So I spent the next couple days crafting up the house. It was simple, but it looked pretty good, and it was in a good location for me to train a lot quicker. I couldn't leave it like this with its floor being grass, so I placed in a bunch of cobblestone and made myself a nice cobblestone floor. I still needed windows, so I found some sand at the end of the day, mined it all, and then smelted it before going to bed. I crafted all the glass into glass panes and placed in all of the windows. Now the house was actually looking like a house, but I still wanted to do some fine details, like adding a railing where the staircase was. I didn't want any of my stuff outside, so I grabbed all my stuff from inside the chests and organized them inside the house. Now that that was done, I was able to go to sleep in my new house for the first time. I was now ready to begin investigating what happened to the Kage. So I looked and found this new village. It was the Senju clan of the forest. And inside of it, the buildings were pretty cool, but I noticed that one was completely destroyed. So I knew it had to be a member of the Akatsuki that did this. So I used my Boruto stream and headed straight to go talk to Tsunade about the problem. She confirmed that it was probably the same Akatsuki that had attacked the Kage. So I knew what I had to do. I had to get ready and prepared to defeat this Akatsuki. After I talked with her, I made my way back home and went to sleep. Then the next couple days, I started training, trying to grind more levels so I could get some upgrades. And after a bunch of training, I had gotten a lot of levels. I was able to basically max out my medicine stat, upgrade my speed, and my ninjutsu in every aspect. I still had a couple more ninjutsu levels to get, and after getting those, I needed some food for this battle. So after fighting a bunch of cows and cooking up the steak, I was prepared to fight this AKATSUKI member. So I left quickly with my Boruto stream to get to the village. And when I got there, I looked around and I saw a boss bar, and that's when I saw Kakuzu, and all of his minions around him. His minions were super powerful, so I fired off a Rasen Shuriken to start the battle. And then I was charging in when his minions started to attack me. And they all jumped in on me and were knocking me back a lot, so I couldn't get any hits on Kakuzu. I tried utilizing my jutsus, but there were way too many of them and I was losing hearts way too quick, so I Boruto streamed to get out of there. One of Kakuzu's zombies got really close, so I started to use my Rasengan to get it back. But these zombie-like things were super powerful and wouldn't take any knockback, so it was super hard to get him away. Eventually, I got surrounded by all of them and tried to get out of there when I almost fell into the cave. That would have left me cornered. So I used my Boruto stream to get out of there super quickly, or else I probably would have died. But now that Kakuzu was in there, I was able to get some good hits on him and use my Shadow Clones to do some extra damage, as well as my Fire Jutsu technique, like my Phoenix Flower Jutsu. I kept doing more and more damage to him while he was down there and using moves like the Rasen Shuriken. Now he was getting super low, so I decided to come back down using my Sage Mode abilities and try and get some more damage off on him or kill one of the minions. I used my Phoenix Flower Jutsu because it was seeming to work and it dealt burn damage. To finish off Kakuzu, I knew I would have to finish off a couple of his zombies. So after a long time, I finally finished off one of them, and now it was time to do the rest. After healing up with Mystic Palm, Kakuzu started charging at me, so I hit him back with a Rasengan. Luckily, he was still on fire, so he was taking fire damage. Now he was super low, so I just had to keep using some big attacks to finish him off. He got put in the fire with my Rasen Shuriken, but before I could finish him off, he knocked me back super far. I knew I had to be careful because this guy could still do a lot of damage. So after retreating back, it was a one-on-one. I had a lot of health, so I knew I could win this battle. But since he kept knocking me back, I was having a hard time hitting shots. So I resorted to using all my jutsus, the Shadow Clone and the Fire. And luckily for me, this was enough to finish him off. Training those Shadow Clones really came in handy. His zombies were still alive for lack of a better word, so I had to use my Fire Jutsus to take that one out as well. And all of the zombies dropped a lot of levels. I went back and checked on Kakuzu's loot, and he dropped a bunch of level 500s and a Swift DNA. And when I clicked on it, it gave me a Swift Learner. And this would allow me to learn a new jutsu, the Swift Release Shadowless Fight. And this thing made me super fast. I knew that I would be able to defeat the rest of the AKATSUKI with this, so I went right back home and went to bed, knowing I was one step closer to becoming the Hokage. The 88, I leveled up a bunch of my jutsus from winning those fights. I then went right back into the Hidden Leaf to go talk to Tsunade. She gave me an urgent mission, which was to go find and kill the AKATSUKI member Kisame. So I left immediately using my Swift Jutsu. And after a couple days of running and looking for him, found him in the middle of the forest next to a river on this bridge. But before I could strike him, I had to deal with this stupid skeleton in my way. When I took a look at Kisame, he looked super powerful. And like I do with most of my fights, I used my Rasen Shuriken to get my first attack in. But this time, it didn't do a crazy amount of damage. So I knew this fight would be more difficult. I charged in with my scythe to get some damage in, but he retaliated and started shooting sharks at me. So after getting some distance, I used my electric jutsus to get him down. That's when he started charging at me. So I used the speed and the Rasengan technique. This would be good because then I could get some powerful hits in, and he couldn't hit me back. Except for that time, which he did a lot of damage. I ran out of food through the fight, so I had to go find some cows and then use my fire jutsu to cook them while I murdered them. And after doing that, I came back ready and prepared to do some more attacks. But this guy was still super strong, and even with my speed, he was still gonna be able to do a lot of damage. So I kept using my speed jutsu to outdodge him, but that had some consequences and got me down to half a heart. Out of all the hearts I had, which was 60, I was down to half, so after I healed up, I went back to finish him off for good. As we kept fighting, my speed kept increasing and increasing, so I was able to land more and more hits. He got me super low, but he was also on basically 1 HP, so I knew I had to finish him off right here and there, and I did. I inspected the loot, and he had a bunch of level 500s, and a crystal DNA. And when I clicked on it, it gave me a crystal skill learner. So now I had multiple jutsus to fight the last AKATSUKI member with. And this one was super powerful. Now that the fight was done, it was time for me to go back home. So I used my Swift Jutsu and ran back home before going to bed. The next day, I used all of the SP that I had gotten to max out all my stats, especially ninjutsu so I could have a large chakra reserve. I also wanted to test out these new crystal things that I had gotten, and they'd spawn basically shadow clones but crystal ones, and these ones were super durable and more powerful. So after bullying Tenten, I got together all the jutsu that I would need before going down into the caves and lighting the whole place up with my fire jutsu because there were a lot of zombies spawning down there and it was kind of annoying, and then I went to bed. It was day 95, so I went back to Tsunade and she told me that there was going to be an attack on day 100 by one of the most powerful in the AKATSUKI, Itachi. So I spent all the remaining time that I had left training and getting even more levels and mastering my new jutsus. And after getting 100 SP, I decided to upgrade my taijutsu a whole bunch so I could be stronger, and I also upgraded a bunch of ninjutsu along with some other stats. So I raced into the Hidden Leaf Village, and that's where I saw the Uchiha clan and Itachi. There were no more Uchiha left. Itachi had murdered them all, so I had to get payback for them. I used my Crystal Clone technique, and then my Wind Rasen Shuriken, and did some damage. I decided to double up with the Crystal Clones and use Multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu, and I got one hit in before Itachi used his Genjutsu and took him out. Equipped in my speed release and started to do some attacks, like hitting him with my Rasengan. But I didn't want to get caught in his Genjutsu or I would be finished. He attempted to use it, but I used my Shadow Clone Jutsu to avoid it, and his Genjutsu affected the Shadow Clone instead of me. So I kept going in with my Rasengan, trying to do more damage while keeping back and staying away from his Fireball techniques. I'd been using all that I had, but it wasn't doing enough damage. So I used my Summoning Jutsu and summoned the Gamabunta. With my Sage Mode and this Gamabunta, I knew I would be able to take down Itachi. So after using the Gamabunta as backup, I used some Rasen Shurikens to get him down and lure him in, doing a lot more damage using my Crystal Clones as bait and then hitting him with my Rasengan. I then got on top of the giant toad and tried to do some damage, but he wasn't really doing anything, so I got off and tried to attack Itachi the old-fashioned way, and he almost got me with his Genjutsu. I also had to be wary of his Amaterasu, because if I was caught in that, I would be finished for good. But that's when Itachi almost finished me off, but luckily my speed was keeping him at bay, and at this point he was just as low on hearts as I was. But not for long, because he hit me with a Fireball Jutsu technique, and I was taking a lot more damage. I was going in for more and more attacks when he got me down to half a heart, so I had to retreat. Any piece of fire would have killed me at this point during this moment, so I used one of my fire techniques to give myself fire resistance. And after narrowly escaping, I decided to scrummage through a bunch of houses to find any food, and in one of these chests I found a bunch of bowls of ramen. So after eating those quicker than Hinata, I decided to go out and finish off Itachi. I then landed one good Rasengan shot and finished him off with some fire. Now I could become the Hokage.
So this was your dream, Naruto Uzumaki.